I'd also like to start with a quick thanks to those all who came here, especially those who came far away, like I know Mr. Oshesky, wherever you are here, and others who might have come a distance. Thank you. I also want to thank Rose in particular. I know the last quite a while now she was at home helping to take care of Dad. I know that wasn't easy. It was very challenging at times, and we want to thank you. And also especially Mom for all the work you did. Helping out Dad, and the CCAC nurses, thank you. So yeah, Rose ended with that phrase, watch and learn. I remember I heard that a lot when I was young. He never told me how to do anything, actually. He would show me. So if I asked, oh, how do you do this? He would say, come here, watch and learn. And whether it's welding something, which I've never really gotten into, or anything else, you just have to watch. But it was a good way to learn, actually. It's better than someone telling you how to do something, is to watch. And so I've learned a lot. So I was thinking, what are some things that I remember of Dad, who he was, that I've learned from also, just by watching him? He hasn't told me any of these things. It was by watching him, really. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is his sense of humor. He actually, he was very lighthearted. He loved to laugh, if you're around my dad. He taught me that you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. A lot of people who live old and live well are because they take themselves lightly. They can laugh at themselves. They can walk it off. They don't take things too heavily. He had this phrase, he loved to say this whenever I'd be leaving. He said, don't work too hard, but get a lot done, whatever that means. But he'd usually laugh when he said that. Or times where he'd say people to anybody who is, especially if we were leaving, even if it was going to church or even if we weren't driving, he'd say, don't drink and drive, even if I'm going to church or in the morning or whatever, just to keep it interesting. In the last days when he would be getting needles from the nurses, he would do this big drama production. Oh! He would go and howling, and the nurses would be laughing. And actually, it was interesting. One of the nurses said Dad was her favorite patient. And I think that partly might have been from the humor and the tenderness they had together. Another thing I learned is from Dad, he loved to learn. If you knew my dad, you know he was always reading the news or watching the news or reading something. He only had, actually, if you might not know this, a grade 8 education. He did trade school after that, but a very little formal education. Most of his learning for construction or anything else was all self-taught. And he loved learning, reading, watching news, and so on. The geography and politics he knew. I don't think he could remember his name in the end practically, but he could remember the capitals of most of the countries in the world and all these sorts of things. He would still remember everything from long back. And loved nature shows and things like that too, where you could learn about animals, or travel shows where you could learn about different parts of the world. I remember often when I lived at home, I'd be upstairs in my room maybe studying or doing homework, and I'd hear from downstairs clearly, Jamie, animals! And I'm like, yeah, I know, Dad, I have some homework here to do. And then 5 minutes later, Jamie, animals! Yeah, I heard you. I know. But he just loved those animals. He loved animals in general. It's kind of ironic because he loved to eat animals too. Like, he loved bacon, pork chops, anything from a pig, really, or other animals for that matter. And he worked in meat processing plants most of his life. And yet it was this strange dualism. He loved them and he ate them so well. Another thing, the simplicity and the gratitude that Dad had, I've learned from, just by watching him praying over a meal. And you could tell how grateful, when you hear the stories, when you talk about the warriors, how they would have almost nothing to eat. And just to have a piece of bread, what that means. These sorts of things that we often take for granted, to live a simple life, not to get all caught up in everything that the neighbor has and everything that you want to improve on. He taught me that the happiness is not in getting more things or more stuff, that it's in appreciating what you already have, who you have around you. These are things I learned by watching. I learned in the simple things, to stop and smell the roses. He had lots of flowers around the house, and that was a literal, thing for him, to stop and smell the roses. Or maybe even take a nap by the roses is even better. And it always would come up often in stories, going back to the warriors, remembering what that was like. That you could tell really affected him the rest of his life. And he would often like to watch war shows too, not because he liked to see the war, but it reminded him how good he has it now. He would talk about what a place this is where we can live in peace. And we don't appreciate that, most of us. I myself don't even realize it because we've never been through it. We don't know what it's like to flee your home in one day's notice and you never see it again, basically. So those are some simple things I've learned. I also learned from him about working hard, being tenacious, not giving up. As Rose mentioned, he was working night shifts most of his life, but still did stuff in the day, working hard to meet the needs of the family. His tenacious side, I don't know if you ever met him, but did you ever notice his right thumb, if you ever shook his hand? There's a little story behind that. His thumb it looked very funny, and what happened was, when he worked in the coal mine in Germany, they put these little train carts together, and there's links that link them. So the one night, his thumb got stuck in between, and the link came down and crushed his thumb completely. Like not just broken, but crushed. So he passed out. He woke up in the hospital, and the doctor said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to take that thumb off. It's completely crushed. It was like a pancake. He's like, there's no way we can reconstruct this. It's going to get infected. We have to take it off. And my dad said, you can't take off my thumb. I use it all the time. It's my right hand, right? I need the thumb. And they said, there's nothing we can do. We have to take it off. He said, you're not taking it off. And they said, what do you mean we're not taking it off? We have to take it. He said, you're not taking it off. And they're like, well, what do you want me to do? He's like, just wrap it up really hard. And they're like, what do you mean just wrap it up really hard? He's like, just wrap it up really, really tight. So they stopped. They couldn't keep arguing with him all day, so they wrapped it up really tight. And you know what happened? Is all the bone fused together in his thumb, and he's had the thumb ever since. He can still use it, but you'll notice he could never flex the thumb because it had all fused. But he was still able to do construction and writing and everything years later with that thumb that he refused to give up. Or the tenacity when after he lost Burns, the meat plant he worked at for many years closed down, and he was already late in his 50s at this point, which, it's hard to find a job when you're that old. And the next job he found, he went there, I believe it was like every day for a week, following up with them, finding out, why, because he had lots of experience doing the job, why they wouldn't hire him and so on. And eventually they gave him the job there. That was Hoffman's later on. And in that statement again, also not giving up your faith. There's going to be tough times that come, like with Dad, with the sickness and so on, and other challenges in life, but not to give up. That you should keep your faith, that you should keep going and not give up. Another thing, and this is one that really sticks deeply with me, is what it means to love deeply. Of course, he had a lot of love for his family. I think especially the grandchildren, how he loved you guys. And I remember the last, especially few weeks and months when we'd bring Caitlin by, and often he would say, I love babies, whenever he saw her. And he just loved her. When you see the pictures in the slideshow, I recommend looking at them. I noticed when I was putting that together, I thought, you know what? I think he looks happiest when he's around the kids, the grandkids, especially the little ones. He has these good smiles with them. Another thing is he taught me, don't be afraid to show emotion, even if you're a man, which is interesting because, from his kind of generation, the men often, you're supposed to be strong, not show anything. But he wasn't afraid to show emotion. Even when people would be saying goodbye, sometimes they'd be very teary goodbyes, and he was very soft from that. There was no shame in that with him. I've learned it's okay to show your emotion. The love he had for others, Rose mentioned the kids he would always support in Africa and projects. A story I can remember that illustrates this love too is when I was still living at home, and he was always watching news in the evening. I was sitting up there, and I could hear, because the door was open, I could hear the news report that was talking, and they were talking in the news about this team that had developed a new variety of rice. It's called golden rice, in case you want to look that up later on. And yeah, I did myself, actually. But this was like 10 years ago. They had just developed golden rice, a new variety, and it's high in beta-carotene, which is basically the whole reason they developed this is a lot of people in the world, their main food is rice. They're poor, they can't afford a full diet, and they're malnourished, and millions of people die from malnourishment. Even though they might have rice, but they're not getting enough nutrition, or they go blind or whatever. Anyway, so this team developed a new variety of rice that's high in vitamin A, which could, in theory, if this gets rolled out in many parts of the world, could help millions of people who are subsistence farmers and so on. And I remember hearing about this, And my dad was crying as he was listening to this news, and he was saying, "Hallelujah." I remember him saying that because he knew this could be helping millions of people who are starving or malnourished, and that he could hear that on television made him so joyous. I just read something yesterday, and it made me cry. I don't know if you saw this in the news. It wasn't, I don't think, in the record today, maybe tomorrow. There was, in the U.S., the first confirmed case of a team curing a baby from HIV, a newborn. I don't know if you heard that. And I wept when I saw it. I said, if only Dad were here, how happy this would make him. How happy he would be to read this article. If I would have had it in the paper, I would have put it with him here. So he had a heart, and he loved deeply. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that faith, coming back to keep your faith, or get faith if you're not there, that to have a purpose in your life. I know sometimes we would talk maybe over a coffee, and it was great having these chats, not just as father and son, but man to man, really. And he could talk about his past, and also even sometimes some regrets, things he regrets doing. Those are important to hear too. You can learn from what not to do in life. And I remember sometimes him, regretting some stuff he did in the past, maybe getting so busy with the houses and so on that he missed out on things. And, keeping up, getting ahead, like everyone else from his generation. And he regretted that. And I think from that I learned that, don't waste your time in life. Don't waste your life chasing after things, chasing after money, chasing fame or whatever else that's just going to pass away and it's worthless. You never hear these people at funerals saying, "Oh, I wish I would have had more money in the bank account." That's not what it's all about. It reminds me of a verse from the Bible. What good is it if someone gains the whole world but loses his soul? For Dad, it wasn't about that. It was about, how can you follow Jesus and do good? Follow him and find life in that. Be a part of the good things. There's so many good things happening in the world right now. Like what we just heard. You could be involved in sponsoring a child like Dad did. Or you could be involved in helping a neighbor like Dad. Or doing maybe on a research team like these people with golden rice or the AIDS prevention. There's so many things you can do in the world right now that you can make a contribution to good in this place. And life is, too short for regrets, too short for keeping things to yourself, that we should live fully today. One last story, and I'll finish with this. I don't even know if most of my siblings know this, but this is sort of a story about faith and what this can mean. I remember one night, and this was actually, I would say, the first time my dad was going to die. This was a long time ago, maybe 10 plus years, long before he had the cancer and so on. And I remember one night, middle of the night, I woke up, which was odd because it was like 3 a.m. It was quiet. Nothing woke me up. And I thought, why am I up? And 2 minutes later, my mom comes over in my room and says, "Jamie, your father thinks he's dying." And to be shocked like that in the middle of the night, I didn't know what to say. I went over to the room. He was kind of talking a little bit, and I had my hand on his chest, and I could feel his heart just racing so fast. And he told me about this vision he had seen with kind of like from the book of Revelation, where there's smoke rising before God, and it's the prayer of the saints. And what stuck with me so much from that experience was he didn't say, "Pray for me, pray that I'm getting better." He said, and this will always stay with me, he said, "Pray for the awakening." He wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about God's plans here. A lot of our society today has forgotten about God. God is irrelevant. And to him, to my dad, no, God is everything in life. God is relevant. We all need an awakening in our lives, in our society, and that will always stay with me. So I'll leave that with you, that my dad's final words, that advice to keep the faith, to find Jesus, to find real life. And Dad, thank you for so much. I love you. Goodbye. I'll see you on the other side one day.